Well, I mean, obviously, the answer for us is you guys. Yeah. You know, that is really the only answer. I mean, you are the voice of the industry. You've been out there talking to the think tanks, the government, etc., etc. So it really starts and finishes with us, with you. Neil, I don't know if you've got anything else you want to say on that. Really.
The same thing, get involved. And I mean, we have a sustainability working group, but it's the work that can be done there, our technical committee, sustainability technical committee, the work that can be done there is really limited by the resource, by the members that are willing to be there and to do something. So if we can try and generate interest and show how valuable, because actually we can, as an industry, we've demonstrated it before, we can go to government and we can make a difference, but we need people to support it. So, yeah.
And that's a brilliant point. You know, the LIA is as good as its members, and a huge amount of work that the LIA does is done by its members through committees. All the work that we did on NEPs, the stuff that the sheer amount of work from members, like very fastly, quickly built task force, and we were meeting 2 or 3 times a week, and that's genius. So the call to anybody online is get involved. You can help the organisation do that.
I think that's where Hutcher and I have always said, and I rang out this thing, if you're a member of the LIA, don't just use it like joining the gym where you pay however much a year and then you sit back and think, is the weight going to drop off me? No, you have to be involved with it. And I think that's the important thing to all of us around this table, that we do need to be involved. And that stems to what Graham and I were talking about just in the brief break, that education is a huge part of everything. What we're talking around the table here, I'm learning things I didn't know about. And that's true from wherever you sit in the supply chain, or whether you're an end user, or going back to the beginning of our supply chain. It's all to do with the education and knowing what's going on. And the more we open up and the more we talk about it, then the more sustainability we will have.
I feel like I should come in here as well. I really appreciate those comments, and it is absolutely right that we just really want members to engage, and that is how to get the true value out of your LIA membership. But also, you know, I'm conscious this video is going to be going out to other associations that are outside of the LIA that are, you know, collaboration partners. If any of the messages that you're hearing from us resonate, you know, with some of the work that you're doing, whether it's parallel or directly related, it really doesn't matter. I think the more of us we can get together, talking passionately from different angles on this topic, on all the complexity surrounding this topic, then the more likely that we're going to be heard. So, you know, I couldn't help but put that call in there at this point.
I think it's worth saying that part of sustainability, and one of the major parts, is partnership.
Yeah.
And partnering with and being part of partnerships, even if it's collaboration with things that you wouldn't have collaborated with before, companies that you maybe wouldn't have collaborated with, being part of other groups. I mean, to use your phrase, you know, get involved. Absolutely get involved, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Neil said there. But partnerships are what is going to have to be that takes us forward, because we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves as standalone entities. Of course, we're all different business units. I get and I understand that. But I've had 30 years of a career in the lighting industry. Want to be part of taking it through the next step, absolutely. But to do that, the whole industry is going to have to understand that partnerships at different levels, be it between manufacturers and providers, that partnerships are one of the key words.
I think there's another aspect here as well, which I think is one of the reasons it's so important that the industry is working together, is that otherwise we're going to find ourselves with regulatory or legislative requirements that actually don't fly. The banning of OLED that you mentioned earlier on the base METS thing that we spent most of last year fighting, I think is a good example why are you removing that option. we need to be at the forefront of saying that these are the things that we can do. So if you have to have regulation around this area, we suggest that it has this kind of structure, and that this is, and you're only going to get that if you work together with people that, as you say, historically, we wouldn't necessarily have done, outside of maybe the technical committees and the technical board. But I think it needs to be a much wider discussion, because with something like this, there is so much detail involved. Yeah. And primarily it's being looked after, I think, in most organisations by the technical function. But in a lot of cases, this is outside of the expertise of the technical function. We're kind of about the electrical and the engineering side of it. Once you're moving into some of these aspects, it's a new skill set. And again, I think that comes back to the comments you were making earlier about younger designers, younger people, getting people in who have a different perspective on this to those of us that are 20 years plus in the industry.
Anybody else want to quickly input on that point?
I think it's interesting, Bob, because we talk about collaborations, but I think it would be great to learn best practice from other industries. However, I think, Bob, when we first started to discuss base maps and linked to DESNZ, actually the lighting industry has been hugely supportive of driving any government initiative historically to try and drive the net zero ultimatum. But I still think that we can learn from other sectors, both in terms of material compositions. I keep coming back to this material thing, but I still think that there is more that we can learn in order to collaborate with others and then try and find some best practice.
Just an auxiliary question, because you're right. If you look at all the original research on net zero, lighting was clearly there. We did our job. We did our job again. We did our job again. And it's hugely disappointing that that's happened the way it has. But how do we get over our voice to these stakeholders about not just sustainability, but the value of light? Education. The education.
Absolutely.
That's education. Because we were struck by one thing that maybe we would now say today is, if we took out the word light in what they were doing and said sight, and we said, so what you're really saying is you're going to reduce the ability of people to see, would you have done the same thing? And it's that value of light. It's retail sales in a shop. It's how you feel at home. It's your, Alan, it's your safety on the street. Yeah. It's performance in an office. It's all these things that we live and breathe every day. But at the end of the day, people think, oh, it says everything in the back here, that's kind of cool.
I do think there is a value in reassessing the value of artificial light. So what is actually the value of artificial light to us as human beings? Well, it's massive. It's a huge impact. We spend 30% of our life in the working environment, be that in multiple different applications. But the value of artificial light is actually goes back to us as human beings. It's about understanding how light actually affects us, not only from a visual point of view, but from a psychological, a physiological point of view, and emotional, how we bond with environments, how our brains works. Now we're looking at, thank goodness, we're looking at re-looking now at lighting from a neuroatypical point of view, because there definitely is a difference. And I think once we start going back to those standardized values and we start remembering why we put light into buildings in the first place, then we can actually, as a group of individuals, come together and lead in a direction that says, this is not just about values of light on a surface. It's about the human impact and the importance of the humanity of it, which they don't understand.
And that doesn't need to be disconnected from sustainability.
No.
There are, so you look at WELL, for example, the WELL building standard. So they promote the idea that circadian lighting, this is their position, their position is that circadian lighting promotes productivity, so it can support productivity. Well, there are clearly links between productivity and sustainability. If you can get more productivity from a space, then there can be less energy use. to achieve the same productivity.